This is Josh Tiffany, and today I will be performing The Monkey's Paw, a story originally published in 1902 by W. W. Jacobs. There once lived a small family who lived in the rural countryside. A mother, a father, and their two children. As the children grew up, the oldest one, as many boys in his day did, went off to foreign lands to fight wars that his government called for. And in his absence, the family tended their farm, tried to keep their heads above water, and just basically continued to live their lives. Until the one day where they got the news that no parent should ever have to hear, which was their son was killed in the war. They mourned, as parents will do. They all felt despondent, their house fell into somewhat of disrepair, and everything about their lives started slipping. It happened to be one day where they all just sat on their farm, staring out at the slowly rotting fields that they could not care to tend, when they saw Simon, their brother's old friend from the neighborhood, and the one who had gone off to war with him, slowly approaching up the long dirt road. He carried with him a small bag. He walked with a limp, and his eyes had those eyes you only see from soldiers returning from war. And he carried with him and brought them the final gift that their son had wanted them to have. They invited him inside, and he put his bag down on the table and reached inside and pulled out a greasy cloth filled with something. And he started to tell them the tale of the monkey's paw. They had been in an exotic land in India when their son had somehow come across one of the mystics who promised him that if the monkey's paw was held and a wish was made, it would come true. But be warned to the person who made the wish, for there were always dire consequences that came. The monkey's paw was capable of 3 wishes, and only the wise and just should try and use it. Their son had bought it and thought it a really neat trinket it carried with him through all of his experiences, and was carrying it with him the day that he died. And as his dying breath, he made Simon promise that he would deliver his final gift to his parents. Simon left the rag on the table and left them. All 3 of them, the mother, the father, and the son, just stared at it for a while, until finally the father dared reach down and remove the cloth, and there was the monkey's paw, all gnarled and dehydrated, and with it 3 fingers poking up, gnarled like a claw, yellowed with age. They all kind of poked it, they all kind of touched it. Half of them believed that it was true, the other half believed that it wasn't. And the first thought that occurred to the mother was, my Lord, this could be the salvation for us. They had become so depressed and despondent over the death of their son that they had let their finances lapse. So the banks had been calling. They were a few steps away from losing everything they possibly had in the world. The father, thinking of the warning that be wary of those who make the wish, dared not mess with such magic. But he could not stop it when he saw his wife reach down and pick up the paw and say, I wish for $2,000. And suddenly she jumped back and dropped it on the table, and they saw it kind of vibrate, as slowly those 3 fingers started to move, and one of them moved down. The wish had been made. They all waited in rapt attention for anything to happen, but nothing did. The house remained silent as it had before. And so time started to pass. They thought less and less of the bizarre wish they'd made over the bizarre tale that Simon had told them. They took the monkey's paw and left it on the mantelpiece as an ode to their son in whatever bizarre capacity it could be. And they went on with their lives until a month later, the mother and father were sitting once again on their doorstep, waiting for their son to return home from his job in the factory, when they saw a car starting to pull up, which was odd, just not many cars visited them. The car stopped right outside their home, and a well-dressed man stepped out. Well-dressed, like only those who are bearing bad news could be dressed. With his hat in his hand, he approached them, and with almost a reluctant look in his eye, he handed them a letter, and he said, I am sorry. Today your son was in a horrific accident, and he died on the job. He was not paying attention, and for one moment he was caught, and he was sucked down in the machinery and mangled. And the parents immediately started to cry. They were devastated. Both sons were dead. And as the tears flowed through their hysteria, through their pain and anguish, they heard him say, our company has a death benefits policy that your son signed up for. Here's your $2,000. I am so sorry. And he turned and left them. They didn't talk to each other for a long, long time after that. The days passed and they just sat staring at the check. Their wish had come true, but at the cost of their son. Their mother, feeling just so devastated with grief and guilt, just needed him back, needed to have never made that wish, and needed everything to be right again with the world. And as they sat on the table, talking, she could not get the thought out of her head until she suddenly bolted up from her chair, ran to the mantel, grabbed that monkey's paw that still had its two gnarled fingers out, and said, I wish for my son to come home. And the monkey paw started to twitch, and this time she held it tight, wanting that wish to come true as slowly the gnarled finger curled down. The wish had been made, and silence fell upon the house as they waited. Night fell, a cold, dark, empty night. The mother sat praying, knowing her son would be home soon. The monkey would fulfill his wish. The father, terrified at what would come for them. What would their son be like so many days after he had left his mortal coil, after his body had been mashed and crushed in that machine? And they sat and they waited as the night grew longer. And outside, they started to hear the sound of something dragging itself slowly up their driveway, up the dirt road. Closer. Closer. The father felt panic rearing up inside of him like some bad dream. The mother, her prayers now almost at a fever pitch as she wished for her son to come home. The father, terrified as the noise. The first sound hit the front step. It was right outside the door. The second step, the mother, oh mother mercy, please return my son to me, please return my son to me. The father, completely now, terror spilling into every ounce of his being. And suddenly, it was at the front porch. It was getting closer. And then they heard it. Something at the door. The mother screamed out a bizarre hallelujah as she sprang to her feet and went running for the door. At the same time, the father grabbed that monkey's paw and held it in his hand and said, I want my son to go away. And as the final monkey's paw's finger curled down, the mother threw open the door and stared out into the blank, endless night. The end.